The fight for rent control gaining some steam in Illinois, where people are trying to hold on to what they have. Organizers here in the city went door to door collecting 3,800 signatures to put a referendum on the ballot next March. And the question is this: should the state of Illinois lift the ban on rent control to address rising rents, unjust evictions, and gentrification taking place in our community?
So helping lead the charge in this is Jawanza Malone. We thank you for joining us this morning. Before we get into kind of the details of how this works, let's just start from the very beginning. What is rent control and why do we need this? I want a personal reason, as experiences that you guys have, that we need this.
Sure. So rent control simply means that rent is regulated. The idea is that on an annual basis, rent has to stay within a certain threshold in terms of the increase. Right now, there is no regulation. Rent is going up, in some cases double on a year-to-year basis. There's an 84-year-old woman in our neighborhood who's on a fixed income who has seen her rent more than double in the last decade, and she can't afford that.
So what we're having in Chicago, we see neighborhoods going through gentrification. We see Pilsen, Uptown. These areas are seeing improvements because the mayor and the city has invested in these areas. We have realtors putting up properties there, so the rents start to go up. The people can't afford their rents.
Exactly.
They're being pushed out of their neighborhoods. That's your position. You want these rents to stay regulated and under control so that people can continue to live where they've lived historically.
Exactly. The speculative market is making many communities just unlivable for low-income and working families. You have the working class families in this city of Chicago who are being pushed out. In the last 15 years, we've seen 215,000 black people displaced from Chicago. A lot of it is just because the cost of living is just so high in neighborhoods when you have household incomes that have really been stagnant. In the traditionally Latino community of Pilsen, 10,000 Latinos have been displaced out of where they've called home for generations.
Wow, so people are still getting paid the same, the wages aren't going up, but not only the rent, but property taxes, and that's another thing that's driving people. How can the property taxes continue to go up like that? What's going on there?
So one of the things that we're finding is that in the Woodlawn community on the south side, just in the first half of the year, property value has gone up 23%. Again, the speculative market. You have the Obama Presidential Center coming into the area, and so people are attempting to cash in on the legacy of the first black president. And so there has to be protections in place so that people aren't removed from the community just because of the cost of rent.
I have to imagine that on the flip side of this, playing devil's advocate, you have the real estate development companies that are going to launch a campaign if you get successfully enough votes or petition signatures to get this on the referendum, that they're going to come back and they're going to have some sort of argument saying this is progress. We need to move Chicago forward. What do you say to the people that are in the polling booth and they have to make a decision? Do we want to move forward or do we want to keep stagnant?
Sure. Well, obviously that's a false argument. And actually the realty lobby has been lobbying legislators since the first part of this year, saying that there should not be a ban, there should not be lifting of the ban, that they should protect rent control. And their argument simply is the same argument you hear from business leaders across the country. They don't want to see regulation. They don't want to see any limit on how much profit they're able to make. But our point is regulations are in place to protect consumers. You look at the food that's produced, there's regulation there. You look at the finance industry, there's regulation there to prevent sort of what we experienced a few years ago.
Now, I know you guys are trying to help the little guy, the people who need it the most, but you hope to have this referendum on the ballot by when? It does not sound like an easy push to me, I have to say. You've got a lot of work ahead of you. When do you want to see this actually on the ballot?
Sure. So it will appear on the ballot in 10 wards across the city in March. We're pushing to have a vote in the state legislature next year to get this ban lifted.
We're getting a wrap right now. What are the 10 neighborhoods that need to be aware that this is going to be on their ballot?
Sure. So it's a cross-section of the city. So we're looking at South Shore, we're looking at parts of Lawndale, we're looking at Uptown, Rogers Park, Pilsen, Little Village, Albany Park. Again, cross-section of the city.
All right, good story, and I'm glad that we brought you on to explain it, because a lot of people have never heard of rent control. If you lived in New York or Manhattan, or you know about that, there's other areas of the country where some people like it, some people don't. So hey, thank you very much for coming on, Jawanza Malone.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.